The room was still when something unexpected happened. Princess Catherine, who was usually calm, suddenly started crying when Princess Anne told her a secret that had been kept for decades. Anne said the words that broke royal custom and made everyone stay together no matter what. She said them in a firm voice that showed she meant them. What happened next wasn't just an emotional response, it was a reckoning. Catherine cried a lot, not just for Diana, but also for the legacy she now had. What did Diana really want? Why tell it now, and how will this moment change the monarchy's emotional future? Opening scene that makes you feel things. It happened in a room full of royal history, with paintings of kings and queens from the past on the walls and old furniture that sang of times long gone. But no one expected this to happen. Not in public, not so raw, not so genuine. Princess Catherine stood with her hands softly clasped at her side, looking calm and collected as always. Princess Anne was strong and steady, looked straight ahead. Her voice was calm but clearly sad. Anne then uttered it in a way that made the air in the room freeze, not with drama or flair. It was her last request. Anne started the stillness in the room getting thicker. She said that the family had to stay together no matter what. Catherine's lips opened a little bit. For a brief moment, her eyes were on Anne. She looked perplexed and didn't know what had just been spoken, but as the words landed, so did the weight behind them. One tear fell from her eye, then another. Her chin shook. There was no way to hide it. There was a webcam on Princess Catherine when she was crying. It wasn't only about what Diana said. It was about everything it held, the broken relationships over the years, the grief that was never spoken, the quiet sacrifices made to keep the image alive. Now with just a few carefully selected words, Anne had peeled back the curtain, and the emotional weight was clear. This wasn't how things were done at the palace, and it wasn't fake sadness. It was the breaking of a royal woman's heart in front of millions, and this was just the beginning. This information is important because of its context. There is more to Princess Diana's legacy than just memories. It's a force, her voice, her choices, and her heartbreaks. They resonate through time, even in the corridors where her children walk now. Her last wish, which has gone unheard until now, is generating up feelings all over again. People are still interested in Diana. She wasn't merely a princess to the people. She was the human face of the monarchy, the one who defied the rules by touching people's hearts instead of waving from balconies. For years, her memory has been a contrast to the formality of the royal family. But now, because to Anne's realization that memory is not only strong but also personal, Diana's voice when the tabloids and the palace were quiet, it was hard to hear. Now though, it's loud again, and it's not because of rumors or scandals. It's because of Princess Anne, one of the royal family's most revered and disciplined members. People pay attention when Anne talks, and that's important because she's never tried to get attention. She is cautious, faithful, and deliberate, which makes this moment feel even more intentional. She selected her words carefully and said them not for drama, but out of responsibility and for Catherine. It had an instant effect on my feelings. Diana's desire didn't merely make her feel good. It took her as a wife, a mother, and the future queen. It made her deal with not only the public pressure, but also the private burden of bringing Diana's values into a future that now felt uncertain. This wasn't just a sad moment, it was a time to think about all Diana stood for and everything Catherine stands for now. Is Princess Anne's duty, the guardian sister through every royal storm. Princess Anne has stayed unshaken, a woman of few words yet tremendous influence, a sister who stood behind the queen with unshakable allegiance, and maybe most crucially, now a quiet guardian of Diana's final truth. Anne has never tried to make the truth seem better or softer way previous members of the royal family have. Her voice was the right way to share this news. When she eventually spoke, it felt more like an act of protection than a revelation, as Diana had wanted. People have thought of her as the royal family's anchor for years, strict, responsible, and sticking to tradition. But there was a deep relationship beneath that toughness that bonded her to Diana in a manner that most people didn't know. They had a closeness that wasn't spectacular, public, or talked about much, but it was true. That intimacy is what makes her words important. She wasn't telling secrets. She was keeping a promise she made to herself to speak now, not for the news but for her own recovery. Her voice didn't shake and her eyes didn't look for approval. Anne did what Diana wanted with the type of determination that only she could. In doing so, she passed the torch to Catherine, who despite her strength felt the emotional weight of being chosen to carry Diana's message forward. The wish wasn't just for the family, it was for her, the one woman the late princess would have thought was a good successor to her heritage. Diana's wish was that no matter what, they all stay together. Anne said those words were Diana's last wish. They were simple, direct, and unquestionably powerful. Once they were delivered, they changed the mood of the whole royal family. It wasn't a remark about politics, it wasn't even a smart move. A sister-in-law who knew how heavy those words were remembers them as the last thing a mother said in private. Diana's wish had nothing to do with how things looked. It wasn't about public relations, it was about keeping her family's spirit alive after she was gone via her sons, her legacy, and her grandkids. She wanted them to grow up in a house where love was more important than hate. What made it so powerful was how simple it was. There was no big plan, no intricate rules, just one thing: stay together, defend each other, and don't allow the crown's weight pull the family apart. And now that message is real in the most surprising way. Not only does it land in William's or Harry's hands, but also in Catherine's. Now she has to decide what to do with it. It changes how we think about Diana's legacy. She was more than simply a symbol of compassion. She was a visionary who knew her family would suffer storms long after she was gone. Now Catherine is standing in that storm with Diana's voice as both her burden and her guide. Catherine's response, which was heartfelt affirmation, is surprising because she never cries in public. It lets you in. That's exactly what happened when Princess Catherine heard Diana's last wish expressed out loud. She wasn't ready for it. She wasn't ready, and you could see the change in her face when Anne's words hit the air. Her jaw got hard, her eyes got red, and then the tears started. It wasn't the kind of crying you expect from a royal, though. It was calm and collected. These were real tears, the type that come from feeling noticed, burdened, and fully overwhelmed. Catherine knew what those words meant. They were more than simply a remembrance. They were like a mirror, a reflection of what she's been trying to keep together. Her marriage, her role, the emotional holes left by silence and time as the future queen. She was supposed to keep the image alive, but in that moment, it broke. All that was left was Kate, a woman standing in the shadow of a legacy that won't go away. The people in the crowd didn't only feel sorry for them, they thought her tears were a sign of strength. They were proof that the monarchy still has a heart, and in those tears a silent pledge was made to respect Diana's wish, not with words but with acts behind the scenes. This is how Anne learned and shared long before Princess Anne stepped forward to tell Diana's last desire. She had been keeping it a secret for years. It had lived like a secret prayer, said in private, remembered in pieces, and never meant to be seen by the public. But something changed, and she knew it was time. Anne doesn't act on impulse. She thinks carefully about every action she takes and is faithful, so it wasn't easy for her to eventually say those things out loud. People who knew her well think she had been keeping Diana's wish secret for years, like a letter that never got written. It could have been a talk they had at Balmoral late at night when no one else was around. Anne may have written it, and Diana may have put it in a drawer that only she could unlock. No matter where it came from, the message was true, and Anne knew she couldn't keep it concealed forever. Sources inside the palace say that Anne talked about it secretly with people she trusted. She was torn between whether sharing it would help or hurt, and whether the timing would open old scars or finally start the healing. In the end, she didn't pick drama. She chose responsibility over headlines because this wasn't about headlines. It was about paying tribute to someone who couldn't speak for herself. When Anne eventually said it, she did so with the kind of calm dignity that only she could provide. There was no embellishment, no passion, simply the truth conveyed in a way that sliced through the clamor and landed right in Catherine's heart. That was what made it so strong. It wasn't intended, it was personal, and it was just the start of the royal balance between tradition and openness. The royal family has always had to walk a fine line between tradition and a world that continues changing. But times like this change the equilibrium. When Princess Anne told the world about Diana's last desire and Catherine grieved in front of everyone, something precious was touched, not simply in terms of familial legacy but also in how the monarchy lets itself be viewed. For hundreds of years, royals have been taught to hide their feelings. Always calm, always polished, and with stiff upper lips and smiles and sadness. That's the picture that the crown was based on. But that picture doesn't always hold up when real people and genuine feelings get in the way. Diana transformed because she displayed weakness and real humanity, and for that she was both admired and chastised. Now, decades later, Catherine is still walking the same emotional tightrope. Her evident anguish makes her ponder a tough question. Should the monarchy keep protecting feeling, or is it time to let the walls fall down? People today demand more than just formality. People want things to be real. They want to know that there are real individuals with real hearts beneath the titles and tiaras. Catherine gave them that, maybe without meaning to, but there's no denying that she did. Now she is at a crossroads. Will she go back to the comfortable royal quiet, or will she choose a new road that lets truth exist alongside it? Tradition on the side. This isn't only a problem for the family, it's an institutional issue, and Catherine may have to lead the change whether she wants to or not. Immediate fallout at the palace. The mood changed right away as they got back to the palace. No one thought the day would conclude with tears. No one thought that Anne's quiet confession would cause a maelstrom of emotions in the heart of the monarchy. But it did, and the reaction behind closed doors was quick. Aides, scrambling, and advisors muttered in the hallways. Just in case, communications teams started writing comments. When Catherine cries on television and it's linked to Diana's memories, the consequences are huge. It wasn't a PR disaster, but it was a family problem that suddenly became public. It is said that King Charles stepped into a private meeting not long after the event became viral. People said that Camilla, who was always aware of how things looked, was worried about the headlines that would follow Diana's want to reveal Catherine's breakdown. These were terms that could turn into stories that the firm wasn't ready for. But this wasn't about controlling the story. It was about keeping the damage to a minimum because this moment was raw and unexpected, and it reopened old wounds, not just with Harry and Meghan still in the background, but also with the older family members themselves. The question that was going through the palace walls was simple: how do we deal with this without looking heartless or out of touch? Some others think that a kind, human-centered solution will come next. Others expect silence, which is what royals have always done. Let the moment pass. But one thing is certain: the emotions that day caused more than just tears behind those hefty palace doors. They made people think deeply about what the monarchy is becoming, and the public and media response showed that the globe didn't just watch Catherine cry. They knew right away, because clips of her face with tears streaming down it were all over the place. There are TikTok edits with delicate piano music, Twitter threads that break down the moment, and Instagram posts that repeat one phrase: Diana's wish still lives. People reacted right away and with a lot of emotion. People felt a lot of sympathy for Catherine. People who usually didn't care about royal news suddenly started posting messages of support. "She's one of our own." One person said, "Finally, a real moment in that palace." Even doubters stopped for a second. This wasn't about scandal, it was about shared humanity. A woman under a lot of stress showed the world a little bit of her anguish. There was a divide in tone in traditional media. Some newspapers tried to make it sound like turmoil at the palace. Some people focused on the emotional weight of Anne's disclosure, but one thing was clear: Diana's presence still captivates. People still pay attention to her, and her voice through Anne and Catherine was once again at the heart of the royal debate. Not everyone thought it was right to make such a private wish public. Some people said it should have stayed behind palace doors, but most people liked it. In a time when honesty is hard to find, this felt real. Catherine's tears weren't a sign of weakness. They were a sign of Diana, of motherhood, and of sadness that never really goes away. And for a short time, the populace didn't see a queen waiting. They observed a woman who, like so many others, has to deal with both the weight and affection of her family. What this means for Catherine's job. When Princess Catherine wiped away her tears, things changed, not only in her heart, but also in her future. People have always appreciated her for her grace, her stillness, Swahili Anse, and her quiet strength. But now she's more than that. She's a symbol of emotional honesty inside a historically closed organization. This alters everything. Until now, Catherine was considered as the royal balancer, the bridge between duty and charm. This amount of intense emotion puts her at the heart of a much broader question: what type of queen will she be? She could back away, hide her vulnerability, and let the moment pass like a wave. Or she may embrace it and take on a new role where being emotionally open is recognized as strength instead of weakness. This could be the turning point, the moment when Catherine starts to lead not just by being there, but by being honest, by being empathetic, by making connections, and by building on the legacy that Diana tried to create and Anne just revived. The monarchy is slowly and carefully changing, and Catherine may now be its emotional compass, especially for a generation that doesn't want a fairy tale queen but a real one. The crown isn't just gold, so what she does next could define her legacy. It's made up of whatever you carry under it. Strategy for the future: Diana's voice leads the monarchy. Words spoken decades ago don't usually have much power over the present, but Princess Diana's voice still guides the monarchy in ways that no strategy document ever could. Her final wish, now revealed, wasn't just about keeping the family together, it was also about shaping the future of an institution that so often struggles to balance heart with heritage. The royals have had a lot to deal with since her death. It's evident now that Diana's legacy is no longer just about memories thanks to Anne's admission and Catherine's response. It's becoming a strategic compass, not the sort made in boardrooms, but one based on love, protection, togetherness, and honesty. These aren't just ideas. Diana wanted her sons to live by these rules, and now that Catherine might carry on that tradition, it has never felt more important. The monarchy is in a world that is changing quickly right now. People in younger generations don't see the crown as a symbol of respect anymore. They want it to get their respect. That means being more open, more vulnerable, and more human. Who better to spearhead that change than Catherine, who just showed how human she is by crying? She didn't just connect with Diana, she connected with millions. That emotional connection offers her something rare: moral authority. This is not only because she married into the family, but also because she is now living out Diana's beliefs in her own way. This legacy isn't meant to take Diana's place. It's about taking her voice into a future where the crown finally learns to feel. When Catherine does things like this, they don't just fade away. They resound, they leave behind markings, and when the cameras stop rolling and the flashbulbs go out, Princess Catherine is left with a choice: what to do next. This choice is bigger than ever after her tearful moment and Princess Anne's shocking revelation. The question is no longer whether she'll act, but how, and more importantly, what that action will mean. People who know Catherine well say she is going through a time of serious thought, not because she is scared, but because she respects the situation. Some suggest she may take the quiet road. First, a private homage to Diana that isn't meant for the public, like a commissioned piece of art, a repaired memorial garden, or maybe a quiet visit to one of Diana's favorite charities, done without fanfare but with respect. But some people feel that something more obvious is coming, like a carefully planned speech that might not be given in a great royal setting, but in a very personal one, like a children's hospital or a center for families in difficulty, where fragility and strength naturally coexist. There is also a new patronage that focuses on family unity or emotional strength, talked about in private. Advisors realize that Catherine's image, now strengthened by emotional honesty, might be a strong way to modernize how the royal family connects with people, and more people think she might exploit this opportunity to bridge the emotional gap between tradition and openness. Another change is slowly taking shape. Her relationship with Princess Anne is in the background. Anne has been the royal model of duty and discretion for decades, but now that she has shared Diana's last wish, she and Catherine may be working together on a shared mission. One is a symbol of the old guard, and the other is the future queen. They are both working to protect the emotional legacy of the monarchy. Their conversations are said to be happening more often lately, which suggests that they like each other more than just as friends. They advise a strategic alignment that is built on more than simply loyalty. It's based on understanding. Anne gave Catherine Diana's most important request, and now Catherine might turn to Anne for advice on how to move it forward. And then there's Prince William, her husband and partner in legacy. How they choose to present themselves in the coming weeks could send strong but subtle messages. For example, a joint appearance that leans into unity, or a moment of acknowledgement, however small, that shows they are listening to not only Diana's voice but also the world watching them. It's not just about how things look, it's about going in a new direction, toward leadership based on emotion, which is rare in royal history but very much required in today's world. The stakes are really high. Catherine is no longer merely a symbol of grace and stability, she is becoming the emotional center of the future period of the monarchy. So what's next? Whether it's a quiet act of remembrance or a bold public initiative, one thing is clear: this is no longer just about royal duty, it's about changing what that duty means. Catherine is ready to write the next chapter, not in silence but with purpose, not just for legacy's sake but for the future that is still unfolding, closing the heart of a reborn monarchy. It all started with a few simple words, a calm voice from a sister, a long-lost wish from a mother, and the tears of a princess. But what happened wasn't simply a family secret. It changed the contemporary monarchy forever. In the middle of that old room, something broke open, not in a scandal or a crisis, but in feelings. A new truth started to come through that crack. Princess Catherine, who was always calm and strong, gave the public something that royals don't often display: a heart that is wide open. She wasn't weak because she cried. They were an emotional tribute, a way to show that she understands the burden she now carries as William's wife and the future queen, as well as Diana's voice, Princess Anne. By revealing that sacred message, she did more than remember the past, she brought it back to life. In doing so, she passed the torch to someone who didn't expect it but now has to rise with it. So what happens next for the monarchy? Can it make place for weakness without losing its hold on tradition? Can it last and change at the same time? Can it really commemorate the past and move forward at the same time? Time will tell. Diana's voice is back, not in whispers but in actions, emotions, and the tear-streaked face of the woman who now holds her place in the world. The crown is still there, but it is now on the shoulders of someone who knows that feeling deeply may be the monarchy's greatest strength. Stay tuned, because this story is far from over. One woman's request, one princess's tears, and a history too strong to ignore as the crown faces a destiny formed by feelings. Catherine may become its most important guide, but is this the start of a more human monarchy, or the start of a bigger change? Keep watching. Diana's tale will go on.